Pesach night, the Leil HaSeder, is a night of questions. Most famously, we have the 4 questions, the Manishtana, that we ask in the beginning of the Seder. But the truth is, throughout the night, it's a night of questions. It's a night of She'elos Utshuvos. The halacha dictates that the proper way to tell the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is the mitzvahs halayla, the mitzvah of the night, is to do so derech shaila utshuva, that a person should ask the questions and another person should answer the questions. Ideally, it would be a father and a son, that the father would answer the questions of the child. However, if there is no child, then the wife asks the husband the questions. If there is no wife, then 2 Talmidei Chachamim who are sitting with each other, they ask questions and give answers. It's a night of questions, and we take it to an almost ridiculous extreme. At certain points throughout the Seder, we have minhagim, we have customs of removing matzah, of holding matzah, of putting things in different places, and the answer often is, why are we doing that? In order that the children should ask. And the answer to their question is, we did this so that you would ask. Which is a funny thing. It's almost as if the questions are the ends in and of themselves. The question is the goal, not necessarily any given answer, but just asking more and more questions. What's going on with all the shilos, all of the questions of the Seder night? Rav Hutner in his Pachad Yitzchak has an amazing observation. Rav Hutner points out that we have another phenomenon within the halachos of the Seder. The Mishnah tells us that the way to tell the story of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is not simply to say it as a linear story from beginning to end, but specifically we have to start at one point and end at another point. There's supposed to be a contrast between the beginning and the end. We begin maschil begnus. We begin with the low points. We begin with the downs in Jewish history. We were slaves. We were ovdei avodah zara. We begin with the negative in our story as a nation. And only then, misayim b'shvach, do we end with the beauty, with the grandeur of the salvation of the Yeshua, of the great pinnacles that we reached in our heights of Yetzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah thereafter. We're supposed to start with the negative and only then transition into the positive. What's that about? Why are we starting Maschil B'gnus and only Misayim B'shvach? Why not just tell the story from the happy parts? Why do we have to have this beginning to end contrast of negative to positive? And Rav Hutner explains, utilizing some lines of the Maharal as is his wont, Rav Hutner explains that the beauty of the Seder night and the beauty of appreciating Yetzias Mitzrayim lies not in the salvation, not in the Yeshua, but it actually lies in the gap. It lies in the space between the gnus and the shvach. It lies in the contrast between the negative and the positive, much like day always follows night, that the light of the sun only shines after a long, dark period of night, so too the Geula only shines for us. It only expresses itself to us. We can only truly appreciate, understand the salvation, the Yeshua of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Yetzias Mitzrayim after we've appreciated the darkness of the Galus. Maschil begnus, and only then, Mesayim B'shvach. Only once we've appreciated the negative can we truly transition and see the contrast to the positive and understand and appreciate and introspect about the Geula that we benefited from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His great salvation from Mitzrayim. Maschil B'gnus u'Mesayim B'shvach. And says Rav Hutner, in a way that only he and the Maharal could really pull out so beautifully, he says that whenever we tell some content over, the context and the way that we give over that content has to be something which represents the content itself. It's not only the content, but the form of the transmission of that content that has to be consistent. If we are telling a story of contrasts, we are telling a story about challenge and resolution, we're telling a story that's maschil begnus and mesayim b'shvach, then the story has to be told in such a way that there's a gnus and a shvach. There's a low and there's a high, there's a shaila and there's a tshuva, a question and an answer. The entirety of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim needs to be told in the way of she'ela u'tshuva, of question and answer, because there has to be a challenge and a resolution, a night and a day, a gnus and a shvach, a negative and a positive. We have to feel the pangs of a galus before we can fully appreciate the thrills of the geula. So too we have to feel the hurt of a question before we can appreciate the taste of a beautiful answer. And so we take it to the extreme, and everything is sheila u'tshuva, manishtana. We're asking questions the entire night. But apparently it doesn't stop there, because according to what Rav Hutner says, it's not simply about the answer. It's not simply about gaining the perspective that the tshuva gives us, but it's actually about feeling the distance. It's about feeling that gap. It's about understanding that you're living in a space between the question and the answer. The format of the Masu Matan, the back and forth, the dialogue of the Seder night is meant to expose us to the feeling of the space between the question and the answer, the space between the challenge and the resolution. We're supposed to feel the questions on the Seder night. And so the questions don't start and end with the Manishtana, with the questions which have an answer of Adam Hayinu. The questions go until the point of almost insanity, of asking questions that don't have answers. Asking questions when the answer is, we wanted you to ask the question. We did this so that the question would be asked, but there's no answer. There doesn't have to be an answer. The point of the Seder night is that we're supposed to feel that space, feel the difference between a question and an answer, and feeling that through the Manishtana, and feeling that through all of the Hagim, of removing the matzah, of holding the matzah, of holding the wine, of putting down the wine. All of those customs that keep the children up and keep them asking questions help enhance the entirety of the forum of Shilos Uchuvos, of the entire context within which the content of Yetzias Mitzrayim lives and breathes, of Sheila Uchuva. We want our children to feel the question. We want ourselves to feel the question. We know there's a resolution. We know there's a Yetzias Mitzrayim. We know we're going to come out on top. But part of the Seder night is experiencing the gap. Part of the Seder night is understanding that we're subject to something bigger, that we live in a space that's neither question nor answer. We live in a space that's full of tension, that's full of a need for resolution. And if we properly appreciate that space, if we properly relate to the questions of the Seder night, if we properly internalize the Shilos, then B'siyat Deshmaya, all of us should benefit from the ultimate tshuva, the ultimate answer of not only Geulas Mitzrayim so many years ago, but of a Geula Shlema b'mehir v'yameinu. Amen.